order to understand and find our way in the present, we need to investigate our past and find the courage to own it. And only then will we be able to advance with our heads held high in the direction that we know is the right one, true to ourselves and of our personal understanding of life as we see it. And we're back with another edition of Learn to Unlearn with Luca Mino. How's everybody doing from Sparta, Tennessee? Hope everybody's doing well. Got quite a bit of stuff to talk about on the radio show today. And I had my good friend and brother Larry Cooper wanting me to talk about the Bill of Rights and the amendments and things like that, to revisit what we were talking about on a previous show. But what really matters to me, and if I had the space in the world, if I had a radio show right now, what would I play? And it would probably be the same thing as a starting point for every show from now on. But all of a sudden my listeners would go down, I think, or my quota would go way down. But this is so important that I have to play this again, because people that know me will know me for two reasons. They'll know me for something called If I Were the Devil, written by Paul Harvey in the 60s as a warning. And the other one would probably be Military Officers for 9/11 Truth by Lieutenant Colonel Robert M. Bowman. Those two things are really powerful and really important to me, and we're going to be visiting both of them today. So I'd like to start off with something that's becoming more and more relevant, sadly enough, in the society that we live in. The devil himself is more and more present in our daily lives. And if I can throw this in, just think of the devil as being an entity as strong and powerful as the best and most gentle and good spirit that there is. For every good spirit, there's a bad entity just as powerful. The devil is always present in our lives, through powerful drugs on our streets, to the misuse of our firearms, to the beating of our spouses. The list is long. So here's a warning of all that coming straight from hell. And we need to really heed this. We need to really listen, because this is from the 60s. And I'm not sorry for playing this again, because it has to be said and dealt with in our lives, and now is the time. So I'm actually telling everybody out there that I love them and I care for them by playing this. Let's have a listen.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies, and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Paul Harvey. Good day.
Indeed, Paul Harvey, good day. That's what you heard there is exactly what's happening today. And I can see people nodding and going, yep, that's exactly what we have today. And in this part of my show, I want to prove it. Starting with something that happened to me a couple of days ago. I saw this Jay Sekulow, I think his last name is pronounced. And he's got a radio show, and he says, call 1-800-684-3110 and give us your opinion on the election and how Trump is doing and what you think. And I kind of looked at that, and I kind of put it aside and said to myself, yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to go on air anyway, and shrugged my shoulders and carried on. Then this morning at 8 o'clock, I see it again. Jay Sekulow, we are live. Call 1-800-684-3110 and tell us your opinion on the election and how Trump is doing. You know what? I called and I said exactly this. After being asked for my opinion or my take on the Trump issue, I got a, Jake Sekulow, how can I help you? Or, you know, what's your first name? And I told him my first name. And he said, so what's your opinion and what's your take quickly? And I said exactly this. Begging your pardon, but instead of speaking about Trump and the elections, should we not be trying to teach people and addressing selections of people behind closed doors, like the Bilderberg meetings or the Rothschild Zionist Dynasty choosing what puppet is going to match their agenda? I should have added that the Koch brothers are doing exactly the same thing with their billions, putting their money behind, in other words, buying the selection process only for those that will back them and their criminal enterprise. So he answered really quickly. He said, we've had similar calls about this. Yep, just a second. And the phone went to dial tone after about 10 seconds, which means I got hung up on. And so instead of calling back, I'm speaking of this today on my radio show today, and I'm adding one more element of this in my show, which is my dog howling because my girlfriend just walked out the door. So I wanted to just add a little bit onto this because this is really important in the political intrigue, the political web, the web to deceive us all, basically. You remember that line in JFK? Oh, what a web we weave when we practice to deceive. So much for Oliver Stone too, by the way, because I guess he's a bonesman. So, you know, you never know what to expect. But I went on Jay Sekulow's main page, and I saw his curriculum vitae, if you want to call it, or who he is and what he's done. And he's also named one of the 25 most influential evangelists by Time magazine. And one of the 100 most influential lawyers in the U.S. And I went, wow, okay. He graduated cum laude from Mercer University, receiving both a bachelor's degree and Doctor of Jurisprudence. Jay Sekulow served on the Mercer Law Review and is an editorial staff member. Following his graduation, Jay served as a tax trial attorney in the Office of Chief Counsel for the IRS. In that capacity, he prepared and brought to trial tax cases on behalf of the U.S. Department of Treasury in U.S. Tax Court. And I'm going, okay, that's something else I'd have a problem with. You know, look at all these people in so many different areas of, quote, illegality, unquote, and making good money along with it. If you think about it, if you think outside the box, they want to get rid of people like me who think like I do. Excuse me, because we're a danger to the power structure. The one that doesn't want truth out, the one that wants to live comfortably during their living years, and they don't give a rat's ass about the people. Period. And then they die, and then they can't take everything with them, so they give their blood money to the young ones in trust or whatever. I say illegalities because that's exactly what they are. And this is, it's precisely why people like me love radio shows like this and have shows about this. And that's exactly why people like that guy I was speaking about cannot have people like me on his radio show talking about this stuff, because they expose what they've been living, and they're we're helping uncover the web of mastery that's been put in place, kind of like when Dracula faces the light head on. Case in point, served as a tax trial attorney. Just that one phrase. Prepared and brought to trial on behalf of the U.S. Department of Treasury in the U.S. Tax Court. Does anybody here know about the Fed and its annexes? Has anybody heard of this guy Ford and what he said in 1922? Has anybody heard or know about the illegal IRS, CIA, FBI, and taxes? This is what I want to talk a little bit about, because it's blowing me away after I spent little more than 25 years figuring this shit out and trying to find out what is going on and what we're up against. When you start to learn about the Fed, you really start to understand the corruption and, yes, the illegalities of our government, and which our government is responsible for since and before 1913. They've been puppets for the Rothschilds and others for a very long time now. You can trace the Rothschilds' beginnings from somewhere like 1743 in the link that I've been seeing, and then I had to cross-verification process with another link and so on. This is what they do. There's an important quote going around social media, which people laugh at, but I couldn't remember how it went. I just remembered the beginning of the quote, "I care not." And I took my favorite search engine and I just typed in, "I care not who?" The next thing I got is Rothschild. And right next to Rothschild, I got this Rockefeller quote of the New World Order, right next to the Rothschild meme. So first the Rothschild quote, then Ford, and then Rockefeller. Check this out. Nathan Rothschild writes, "I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England or to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." That's Nathan Rothschild. Okay? And Ford wrote in 1922, "It is well that the people of the nation do not understand our banking system and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." And David Rockefeller, which meme is right next to it, says, "All we need is the right major crisis and the nation will accept the New World Order." And Rockefeller said those words while fantasizing and or planning about 9/11, as in this phenomenal piece that I'm going to play for you called "Military Officers for 9/11 Truth." We really need to hear this again, I'm afraid, because it brings it all home. And it's really powerful because we need to talk about 9/11 for this very reason, and I'm going to get into the Rothschild history, okay? This is a quote from the Rothschild's timeline, and just type that in, your favorite search engine, Rothschild timeline, and then go down to 2001, and it says, on September 11th, 2001, "The attack on the World Trade Center is orchestrated by Britain, America, and Israel under the orders of the Rothschild, as a pretext for removing the liberty of the people worldwide in exchange for security, just as they did with the Reichstag fire in Germany, where the citizens were lied to in order to give up liberty for security. They also use these attacks to gain control of the few nations in the world who do not allow Rothschild central banks. And so less than 1 month after these attacks, the U.S. forces attack Afghanistan, who has the drugs, who has the oil, and they put the banks in place. One of the 7 nations in the world who do not have Rothschild-controlled central banks at that time. And we'll get into that right after I play this for you, because this is really important. It's called Military Officers for 9/11 Truth, and it speaks volumes for those interested. Let's have a listen.
Thank you, David. And now we'll bring to the microphone Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bowman.
Thank you. As a pilot, I concur with Colonel Gapp's analysis of the gross improbabilities in the official conspiracy theory. And as an old interceptor pilot, I share his puzzlement over the lack of interceptors that fateful morning. As a career military officer, I'd like to concentrate on the enormous harm the official 9/11 conspiracy theory has done to our military establishment and to the people in it. Using 9/11 as the excuse, the multinational corporations and bankers have used our brave young troops as cannon fodder in their corporate wars of aggression. They have systematically taken away our constitutional rights, including those of our military personnel. The entire war on terror is phony. And it would be even if you believed the ludicrous official conspiracy theory about 9/11. Both wars were planned before 9/11. The war of aggression against Afghanistan was in retaliation for the Taliban refusing UNICAL rights to build a gas pipeline across Afghanistan to get trillions of dollars worth of gas from the Caspian Sea to their tankers in the ocean. The military leadership knew it had nothing to do with the Taliban harboring Osama bin Laden. The Taliban had offered to give us Osama for trial, but the Bush administration ignored the offer for 2 reasons. One, they had no evidence against Osama, and according to the FBI, still don't. And 2, the war had already been planned in detail to secure that gas pipeline. The war against Iraq was outlined in the PNAC document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, published before George W. Bush even became president. Its purpose was to provide a military staging base from which to control the entire Middle East and its tens of trillions of dollars worth of oil and gas. Now, the authors of that document admitted in it that the American people would never go along with their plans unless there was a catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor, unquote. Well, 9/11 provided that event. Yet they were unable to tie Iraq to 9/11, no matter how hard they tried. So they came up with a new excuse, WMD, weapons of mass destruction. It is here that we in the military saw through their charade. They had us mass 150,000 troops in one small area in Kuwait, awaiting the start of shock and awe. If our military commanders had even the slightest thought that Saddam Hussein might have had even one WMD, they never would have deployed their troops so that they could be wiped out in a single attack with one WMD. The truth is that our government knew there were no WMD in Iraq. Our people in the military were put in a horrible position: either sacrifice their career and their freedom by refusing orders, or knowingly participate in a war of aggression against their oath of office and the Nuremberg principles enshrined in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So we have two corporate wars of aggression, wars in which we are making the same mistake as in my war, Vietnam. We are fighting the people who live there. What has been the result? About 5,500 of our finest have died. The lives of 40,000 of our injured soldiers will never be the same. Tens of thousands of our young men and women have severe psychological problems because of what they have seen and what they have done. Hundreds of thousands have been poisoned by depleted uranium and will suffer lives of pain and disability, and will father thousands of children with severe birth defects. Our military services are depleted and demoralized. The VA system is underfunded and overwhelmed. The National Guard and Reserves have been subjected to tour after tour, disrupting lives for even the lucky ones who return unscathed. Jobs have been lost, homes have been foreclosed, marriages have been destroyed, children have been estranged, and for what? We have alienated our friends around the world and made new enemies. We have created thousands of new recruits for Osama bin Laden, whether he's alive or dead. And we have further endangered the American people, and all because of 9/11. You know, there's massive evidence of a cover-up with respect to 9/11 itself. I've spoken with both Governor Kane and Congressman Hamilton, the co-chairs of the commission, and they both say that there are outright falsehoods in the final report. Never mind all the omissions. The report over which they had no control. It was written in the Bush White House by Philip Zelikow. Now, when you combine this with the confiscation of videotapes, audio tapes, black boxes, and other evidence by the FBI, it is clear that regardless of who was responsible for 9/11, the subsequent cover-up was itself a conspiracy involving elements of the Bush White House and the intelligence establishment. To prevent further 9/11s, we must get to the truth about all those involved in the last one. You know, the American people have never been told who was really responsible for 9/11. Dedicated researchers, like some we've heard today, have proven that it could not have happened the way the Bush administration said it did. Hijacked airliners do not fly around for an hour and 40 minutes without being intercepted, unless our air defense system was deliberately sabotaged. And 19 Arabs with box cutters couldn't have done that. Indestructible black boxes, and by the way, they're not really black, they're bright orange, but never mind. Indestructible black boxes do not evaporate in the same fire from which an unharmed passport floats to the street below. Airliners, all of whose parts carry identifying numbers, do not crash without leaving a shred of evidence as to what they were. You know, the truth about 9/11 is that after 9 years, we still don't know the truth about 9/11, and we should, and so should the families of victims. And let us always remember the victims of 9/11 include not just the roughly 3,000 people who lost their lives that day, but the 5,500 military personnel who have lost their lives in the Afghan and Iraqi wars, as well as the hundreds of thousands of innocent Afghan and Iraqi civilians. All of these victims and their families cry out for a new independent investigation of 9/11. Only when the official myth is exposed and the truth told will the wars and occupations end, the creation of new victims stopped, and our military returned to its constitutional task of protecting our borders and our people, not the financial interests of multinational corporations. This one change in military mission, eliminating the mission of protecting the global financial interests of multinational corporations, will allow us to greatly enhance our national security and reduce the defense budget by 80%. But it's not going to happen until people learn the truth about 9/11. Only then will people understand that our security is not enhanced by sending our working class youth around the world to kill the sons and daughters of working people in other countries. Only then will people understand that our security is not enhanced by sending our children to the Middle East to kill Arabs so the oil companies can profit from selling the oil under their sand. No more battleship Maines, no more Pearl Harbors, no more Gulfs of Tonkin, no more incubators in Kuwait, no more 9/11s, no more false flag attacks, no more lies. As a 100% disabled combat veteran, I say the best thing our government can do for us is to quit making more of us. But how do we get our government to support what's left of our troops by bringing them home while they're still alive? How do we achieve a new constitutional foreign and military policy? We, the people, must reassert our sovereignty, and the key to doing that is 9/11 truth. We must expose, indict, convict, and incarcerate the liars, the murderers, and the traitors, and then replace them with patriots devoted to the truth and to service to the people. Seek the truth, and the truth shall make us free. Thank you very much.
And he's no longer with us. I'm not sure why. I hope it was a natural death. For people who are just joining us, the reason why I'm bringing military officers for 9/11 Truth up on my radio show today is because we're talking about the Rothschilds. And by the way, before we go on, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bowman has a pretty impressive list of what he's done in his life, including PhD, Director of Advanced Space Programs Development under Presidents Ford and Carter, U.S. Air Force fighter pilot with over 100 combat missions, PhD in Aeronautics and Nuclear Engineering at Caltech, former head of the Department of Aeronautic Engineering, and Assistant Dean at the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. Anyway, he's got a whole list of pretty impressive feats in his life. And the reason why, again, we're talking about this is because, very interestingly, on the Rothschild timeline, and I'm going to say this again, you can go to the web and just look up Rothschild timeline, and you'll see it when you go down to 2001. Quote, on September 11th, 2001, the attack on the World Trade Center is orchestrated by Britain, America, and Israel under the orders of the Rothschilds, as a pretext for removing the liberty of the people worldwide in exchange for security, just as they had done with the Reichstag fire in Germany, where the citizens were lied to in order to give up liberty for security. They also will use these attacks, and this is very important, to gain control of the few nations in the world that don't allow Rothschild central banks. And so less than 1 month after these attacks, the U.S. forces attack Afghanistan for the poppy fields also, you know, the heroin and the drugs. One of only 7 nations left at that time in the world that don't have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. So when you look at the history, it started in 1816. The American Congress passed a bill permitting yet another Rothschild-dominated central bank, which gives the Rothschilds control of the American money supply again. Apparently it happened before 1816. This is called the Second Bank of the United States and is given a 20-year charter. The British war against the America therefore ends with the deaths of thousands of British and American soldiers, but the Rothschilds got their bank. It's hard to read because it's in very small print. In 1837, the Rothschilds send one of their own, August Belmont, an Ashkenazi Jew, to America to salvage their banking interest, defeated then by President Andrew Jackson. See, so if you look at the Rothschild-owned central banks and what they represent, it's written in small print again, don't mind me. Central banks are illegally created private banks that are owned by the Rothschild banking family. The family has been around for more than 230 years and has slithered its way into each country on this planet, threatened every world leader and their governments and cabinets with physical and economic death and destruction, and placed their own people in these central banks to control and manage each country's pocketbook. Worse over, the Rothschilds also control the machinations of each government at the macro level, not concerning themselves with the daily vicissitudes of our individual personal lives, except when we go too far out of line. So that's what the Rothschilds are all about. And don't forget Rockefeller in that statement I just read about him before the break. All we need is another right major crisis, and the nations will accept the New World Order. And that was before the PNAC document came out. And it was also stated that it would be another catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. Something I also thought was interesting, they show the New World Order devil advocates, as they call them. One is Bill Gates, and the other one is Evelyn de Rothschild. I even wrote a tweet to this guy, to both of them actually, telling him what I thought of them. Since 2001, Iraq and Libya have fallen into Rothschild New World Order. Since 2001, 8 countries have removed Rothschild New World Order, and many countries are clamoring to remove the iron fist of the New World Order bankers. Hi, I'm Bill Gates. I'm worth $61 billion Rothschild Federal Reserve paper. And I'm into vaccine depopulation for the New World Order at the time, you know, for now. Hi, I'm Evelyn de Rothschild. I'm a paper peddler, and each unit of currency is an IOU to my family. I'm into hoarding by any means. Before 9/11, okay, there were reportedly 7 countries without a Rothschild-owned central bank: Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. You notice how we're always at war with these countries? Since then, Hungary, Russia, China, Brazil, India, South Africa, Qatar, and Egypt have removed New World Order Rothschild. I thought that was pretty interesting. And there's a picture of the old Rothschild sitting there with chess pieces, and each chess piece has a name. And he's sitting there, he's got his hand up in the air, ready to move whichever one he wants. And the pieces are as follows: government, corporations, media, religion, science, military, police, and the little pawn is called you. Okay? And this is how they operate. So when people talk about it, or when people clamor about it, especially on social media, there's an automatic freeze up or something, or your account has been suspended, or something like that. And I don't mind repeating myself, like in past shows. So here goes. U.S. intelligence officer, whistleblower, says that every single terrorist attack in the U.S. was a false flag attack. May 15th, 2015. Again, every single terrorist attack was a U.S. false flag attack. They did it on purpose in this country. And people who speak about stuff like that go missing in the Scottish Highlands, like Robin Cook. Remember him? There is no Al-Qaeda, he says. Just like ISIS. When you think of ISIS, think of John McCain. But in his case, he said, the truth is there's no Islamic army or terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. Any informed intelligence officer knows this. But there's a propaganda campaign to make the public believe in the presence of an unidentified entity representing the devil, only in order to drive TV watchers to accept a unified international leadership for a war against terrorism. I thought war was terrorism, The war on terror was invented, and 9/11 was just an excuse to be able to do that. He continues, he says the country behind this propaganda is the U.S. And then it says former British Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, who died suddenly while he was hiking in the Scottish Highlands 1 week after giving that speech. So you know what I say? I say that the system is not broken. And that's one of the only things I disagree with what Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bowman said in his speech. What is needed to get the country on the right track, and our military leadership should be taken. No, they should. No, the system is not broken. It was built this way, which means that they won't fix something that they don't think is broken. This is how the system works. This is how it was put in place. And it's really important to understand that. And I guess the Rothschilds are going to be a central piece of my radio show today. Because again, he said, I think in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets, to make the world England, The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. That was Nathan Rothschild. So that's where we stand with him. And that's where we stand with the Rothschild family. And I even wrote to them. I even tweeted to them.